You see the name Kohelet right here in Hebrew. If you have this word right here, you see that it means congregation or to congregate. Let's bring here a congregation, right? If you add the letter Tav, then you have they put the book of it, but it would be a person. Well, if you put the Kohelet, I'll put the Vav just to add the sound of the O to see if they change it. No, they didn't. Okay, but the point is here that he is the one who gathers the congregation or the crowd. So the one who congregates, right? Now it's interesting that the one who congregates is the last, right? The letter Tav, first and last, Aleph and Tav. So he who congregates is the last. How? By coming from the heavens. Remember that the Kuf represents the heavens. Is the only letter that goes down from the line. So it represents the heavens, the end times, and coming down. So coming down from the heavens in the end times, behold, he brings the revelation through the teaching as the good shepherd who seals the chosen few with the doctrine of he who was sacrificed on a cross. The one who gathers, right? So it is an important book, an important name. So Kohelet. And I'll begin with verse 1. Oh, another thing that I always like to say regarding this book is that in Judaism, it is believed by many that this book was not written originally by Shlomo, but by Asmodai or Asmodeus, the prince of demons. We have Asmodeus. It's interesting to notice that it has Deus in it, right? First, second, let me see a couple more things. You see here, it's a prince of demons. He appears in the book of Tobit, right? Tobiyahu. We've seen it. He represents lust. And he was the one who was called by Shlomo, according to his testament, to receive, he called him so that he could get help in order to do certain things that he needed to do for the temple, according to some writings, not just the testament. And it is said that Shlomo was deceived by Asmodeus. Asmodeus asked for the ring that gave Shlomo power over the spirits and demons and angels. And by taking it off, his power was gone. So Asmodeus took the ring and took his form. So it is said that he reigned for like 7 years with the form of Shlomo while he sent Shlomo away. And Shlomo had to go to his kingdom, back to his kingdom. Nobody believed him until he was able to talk to one of his advisors who started to believe. And he told him to go and tell his wife to check the feet of her husband, or whom she thought was her husband. And when she did, she saw that he had the feet, according to what is written, of a like a chicken. So that's when she realized it was a demon with the shape of a man, except for the feet. And that's when when he was revealed, pretty much Asmodai had to give the ring back, and he regained authority. So in Judaism, it is said that it was during this time that Asmodeus wrote the book. Now they say that because the book seems to be very pessimistic, very negative, some would say, but it is because they don't understand the point of the book. They don't understand the way it was written. And I do believe it was written by Shlomo, because indeed is wisdom that is being given, but the wisdom that has to do with this reality, meaning everything that we need to know from the point of view of the flesh, of matter. regarding this reality. So we'll see that as we read the book. But like I said, since it is pessimistic when it comes to the flesh, when we don't understand it through the spirit, then some came to believe that it was written by the prince of demons. Oh, you see here, the demon is also mentioned in some Talmudic legends, for instance, in the story of the construction of the Temple of Shlomo. As I was mentioning. Then let's see what else. You see here, this is how it is said that he looks like. This is one of the demons of Goetia. It is said that eventually, well, Shlomo was able to capture 72 demons in 72 different vessels, and this was one. Somebody invoked it, and when it appeared, this is how it looked. And you can see that in a way is trying to copy the four creatures around the throne of Yahweh, right? Not exactly the same four creatures, but four faces, one of a man, one, this could be an ox, right? This is like a goat. And this may be a like a dragon, but obviously it is like Baal, Azazel, and Samael manifesting as a man, right? In a way. And you see the feet, those were the feet that Shlomo's wife saw. And she realized that's not Shlomo. Ugly feet, but not that ugly. And well, I'll just go back. Let me see what this says. In the Testament of Shlomo, in the first, third century text, the king invokes Asmodeus to aid in the construction of the temple. The demon appears and predicts Shlomo's kingdom will one day be divided. When Shlomo interrogates Asmodeus further, the king learns that Asmodeus is thwarted by an angel, Raphael, as well as by shellfish found in the rivers of Assyria. He also admits to hating water. Asmodeus claims that he was born of a human mother and an angel father. So that means he's an evil spirit, for he would have been a Nephilim originally, according to obviously the testament of Shlomo. All right, so going back or starting, it says the words of Kohelet, son of David, sovereign in Jerusalem. As it says here, the Hebrew word means assembler or convener. An appellative, the author could have been Shlomo or else some post-exilic writer. I do believe is Shlomo. And as I was saying, Kohelet as he who gathers or assembles. The words of Kohelet, son of David, sovereign in Jerusalem. Futility, futility, says Kohelet. Futility, futility, all is futile. So you see how it starts. Very positive, right? Very positive vibe. So like I said, if you don't see this with the spirit, it is hard to have a laugh at how negative it seems, because it is what it is. If it wasn't because of the spirit, if it wasn't because of the will of the Father and his purpose for this reality, nothing would be worth doing or believing or whatever. This world would be just futility, vanity, as other translations say. So all is futile when it comes to the flesh, when it comes to the earthly reality. All is futile, and that's why we need to seek the heavenly, the spirit. Well, like I said, it's interesting how it begins. For this was just the intro, right? Pretty much saying these are the words of the one who congregates, the son of he who is beloved, the sovereign in the instruction of Shalom. Futility, futility, says Kohelet, futility, futility, all is futile. In Hebrew, we see Habel, Habalim, which is translated as vanity of vanities. Amar Kohelet, says the assembler, Habel, Habalim, Hakol, Habel, everything is futile. All things are vanity. Now, this word right here can be seen also, and let me check something real quick. Well, show something real quick. You see the name Hebel? Hebel, that is breath, or futility, vanity, because just like a breath comes and goes, so that is the meaning of something that is futile or vain, an illusion, something that passes. You see, vapor, breath, vanity, same name. So when Hebel and Cain were born, their names meant something that would happen through them and also where they came from. Cain, as well, there are several translations for Cain. One is a weapon, another one is a belonging. So he was seen as a belonging, as an object, and that's how he acted without using reason, being controlled by a spirit, by his anger. While Hebel came to see how this world is futile, is vain. For like a breath, he came and went. He didn't last. He was the first to die, and he was the one who inaugurated Sheol, right? As we have seen. So he saw how this world is vain through Cain, who represents matter, an object, like I mentioned, ended up killing he who was futile. So that's why we needed Set, right? Which is the true son of Adam, as we see in Genesis 5. But going back, we could say Hebel or Abel, says Kohelet, Abel, all is able, right? All is like a breath, all is vanity, all will pass. What does man gain from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? This saying right here is key to understand the whole book. Under the sun. Not only does it say that we are under the sun, not on the side of the sun, as they say nowadays in science, we're under the sun. It is clear when you see and when you look at the sun throughout the day. But the point I'm trying to make, and the reason why this is key to understand the book, is that you will see this phrase many times in the book, and that is Kohelet, Shlomo, saying that everything that he's saying has to do with this reality, the earthly reality, that which is under the sun. That's why we need to focus on that which is above the sun, so that what we do under the sun is worth something. But when it comes to under the sun, as it says here, what does man gain from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? Nothing. Is futile, no matter what he does. He came with nothing, he lives with nothing. The only thing that we will take with us are our good deeds. Those are the ones that will give us something in the next reality. That is the true gain. But that is not the gain that Kohelet is speaking about. He's talking about earthly gain. No matter if you gain the whole world, but if you lose your soul, that was worth nothing. However, you may lose the whole world, but if you gain your soul, that is everything. But he's not talking about soul, he's talking about the world. What does man gain from all his labor in which he toils under the sun? A generation passes away and a generation comes, but the earth stands forever. Remember that this is talking in an earthly way, yet it gives us hints of the spiritual. I have also mentioned or taught regarding what is normally known as reincarnation, which we see in the scriptures, but it was taken out in Catholicism, and then we were told that that was from Satan. Yet, if we look at the scriptures carefully, we will find it. And here we see part of it, because you see how it starts, and this will be key to understand what's coming next. So listen, a generation passes away and a generation comes, right? Generation obviously has to do with generating, as in generating new people in the world that come after those who have passed away. But just like a generation passes away, a generation comes. It is talking about, obviously we can say, we can see it as every generation is new and different from previous one, obviously. But when we see time as a circle, which Kohelet teaches us that that's how it works, then we can see this as, and I'm not saying it's just like this, but just like it was two generations. One passes away, the other one comes. When the one that came passes away, the previous one comes, right? Once again, like a circle, like first and last, because this world has duality. That's why above and below, right and left, sun and moon, male and female, cold and hot, etc., etc. So that's why this book focuses on two sides of everything. A generation passes away, a generation comes, but the earth stands forever, right? Or so it seems, obviously, until Yahweh comes and changes it for the better one, new world, new heavens. But people come and go and the earth remains. And then starts talking about other parts of nature, of reality, that act in the same way, which leads us to understand that so do the spirits, the souls of men. The sun also rises and the sun sets in the east and the west, first and last. Yahushua said, I am the light of the world. And the last comes as the sun of righteousness. The sun also rises and the sun sets and hurries back to the place where it arose. So when we take this with this, I repeat, it will be like saying a generation passes away so that a generation can come. But after that generation passes away, this one which passed away has to come again, just like the sun also rises and the sun sets and hurries back to the place where it arose, meaning the east. Going to the south and turning round to the north, turning, and on its rounds the wind returns. Verse 6, Holech el darom, is, well, this is it goes or it walks around the north and around it goes. The ruach, right? You see how here we have ruach in Hebrew, which is being translated as wind. But ruach is also spirit, which is represented by the wind, because Hebrew is a concrete language. So it uses that which we can see and feel to understand that which we cannot, that which is from a different reality. So Kohelet is explaining everything regarding this reality for us to understand the next, or the highest reality. Haruach. And then it says, and it goes around and it turns the ruach, right? It goes back around. So going to the south and turning around to the north, turning, and on its rounds the wind returns. So if this is talking about the ruach, it's not only mentioning the wind that we feel, right, when we are outside, but it's talking about the ruach that gives us life, going to the south and turning around to the north, as in dying and then coming back. turning, turning, and on its rounds the wind returns, turning and turning. Interestingly enough, well, it's different, but in Hebrew they call reincarnation Gilgul, which comes from the gal that I mentioned, the circle or circuit, because it represents coming back, returning, or as he's saying here, turning. In this case, the word that is being used is different. Is this right here, Sobev, from Zaviv, I like to turn around or to go around. But that represents, I repeat, how the soul goes around. And you see how it starts with a samech. The samech, it depends on what font you use, but the samech, as you can see here, is the circle. So the word to go around, it starts with a circle, right? And that's what the spirit does, goes around and around like the wind. And in Hebrew, in Hebrew, south, well, let's see it here. Is mentioning as that darom. So we have this word for south, which is not used a lot. You see, it's only used in Kohelet and in Ezekiel. Oh, well, in these two times right here. Darum, or darom, I'm sorry. This is a door, a head, a nail, and water. Oh, they don't say much about it. The light or sunny region. Now, when it comes to the south, in Hebrew, it represents the right hand. Represents where the head of the man is when it comes to the four creatures around the throne. It represents blessing. So saying, and he walks to the south and it goes around to the north, Safon, that is connected with a treasure, something that is treasured. So going to the south and turning around to the north, that will be like going through the door into the next reality and then turning around to the treasured reality, that of the living. Turning, and on its rounds, the wind, the ruach, returns. All the rivers run into the sea. This is another analogy that I use a lot when it comes to reincarnation. Because remember that Sheol, where the souls of the dead go, Sheol is represented throughout scriptures by the sea. A river represents life. It grows in a mountain, well, it comes out of a mountain and it starts coming down until it reaches the sea. Just like a life, once it starts going down until it reaches Sheol by dying. That's why the Yarden or Jordan River means the one who descends, because it would descend to Sheol or the sea. And Yahushua descended into it to represent that he would descend into Sheol, right? So it's interesting that it says all the rivers run into the sea, just like all souls go to Sheol. Yet the sea never overflows, just like Sheol is never full. And we see that in several parts of scriptures, that Sheol never says stop. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. So the river starts in a mountain, it goes to the sea. In the sea, the cloud absorbs the water and then it moves to the mountain, and then that water comes from the mountain again into the sea. So that is pretty much saying a person is born and then throughout life starts going down into the sea, which is Sheol. But then Yahweh, through his mercy, like a cloud, takes his soul and brings him back to this reality of the living, so that he may have another opportunity to rectify and to become better for the next reality until he returns once again to Sheol. So all rivers run into the sea, yet the sea never overflows. To the place from which the river comes, there they return again. And I know that some may be hearing this for the first time, so I'm just going to mention something real quick. And I mean, regarding reincarnation. In the book of John, chapter 9, we see a very interesting, and I like to read this one, even though there are some other parts in scriptures, but I like to read this one because this is from the New Covenant, and Mashiach is involved, so it's an important verse. And passing by, he saw a man blind from birth, right? Blind from the time that river began, blind from birth. And his taught ones asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? So we see that the Talmidim, his taught ones, believed in reincarnation. Because of this question, we understand that. They say, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he should be born blind? So they understand he was born blind, and they see this as a punishment. So they say, who sinned, the parents, and that's why he was born blind? Or was it himself? But then the question would rise, when would have he sinned if he was born blind? He cannot sin in the womb. And therefore, that means that they believed in the possibility of him having lived in this reality before, and because of his sin in a previous life, now he had to be born blind to rectify the sin. So to them, and obviously not just to them, but those who were Yahudim, the Israelim, they saw these two options as the reason for someone being born with a problem, physical problem. Either the sins of the parents or his own sins in a previous life. Yet Mashiach adds another option, another reason for someone to be born with a physical problem. And that is so that Yahweh may manifest through him by healing him. Yahushua answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned. Yahushua could have said, are you crazy? How can you say that there is no reincarnation? You have believed a pagan belief. He didn't say that. He didn't say that that doesn't happen, or that that's never the reason. He said, in this case, when it comes to that man, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of Yahweh might be made manifest in him. That the works of Yahweh might be made manifest in him. Now, there are some who, not wanting to believe in what scriptures say, they may say, oh, no, what Yahushua is saying is that this is the only reason for someone being born with a problem, a physical problem. And that would be an issue, because then that would mean that all who are born with a physical problem would have to be healed at some point in their lives. Because the Talmidim asked, what is the reason for this man being born blind? Himself or his parents? And Yahushua says, no, it is for Yahweh to do his works in him. So people who are born that way and die that way would be, well, we could say obviously that they had the chance through Mashiach in faith to be healed. But if they weren't, then only these two options would be available, meaning it would be either because of their own sin in a previous life or because of the sins of his parents. Mashiach never said that that doesn't happen. It's just, it wasn't the case with this man. So he added a third option for someone being born in that. So all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea never overflows. To the place from which the rivers come, then there they return again. All matters are wearisome. No one is able to speak of it, right? No one is able to explain how worrisome all matters are. Way too much, this reality. All matters are worrisome. No one is able to speak of it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing, right? Everything in this reality has, since there's duality, has a positive and a negative. So if you focus on the negative, you'll have issues throughout your entire life, and everything will be worrisome. But if you understand there's a purpose for everything and all things are for the good of those who love Yahweh, then you will find a purpose and be happy with what you get in this life. For the eyes are not satisfied with seeing. The eyes always want to see, and the eyes will want everything, or at least most of what they see. So we need to be careful not to see everything, to control our eyes. And that is why you see how many times when you're going through the road in a car and there's an accident, there's something that wants to see the accident, right? And that's why there's a lot of traffic and people stop and see, and then there are issues. Because the eye wants to see everything, and it's normal. But we need to be careful, because sometimes we might see stuff that we shouldn't. Even in those cases, right? You might see something that is too hard when it comes to an accident or something like that. We need to be careful because, for instance, there are a lot of men who struggle with porn. And that is because the eye is not satisfied with seeing. So he needs to see more and more and more and more and more and more. And it becomes a huge problem. The same, nor the ear filled with hearing. That's why there are a lot of people who wants to hear gossip all the time or whatever. But like we saw in Timothy, right? They want to hear what they want to hear. So they seek those pastors, false pastors, that tickle the ear. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what shall be. Another one that shows that everything that was will be. Not only actions, history, which repeats itself, but also people. For generation goes, generation comes. That's why Yahushua came with Yahuanandi and Mercer, and they killed them both 2,000 years ago. Now, the witness like Moshe comes with Eliyahu, and they will be killed, because what has been is what shall be. History will repeat itself, first with the Israelim and then with the Gentiles, so that nobody will have an excuse. What has been done is what shall be done. So you see how it says it in two different ways. What has been is what shall be. What has been done is what shall be done. There are two parts to everything, even to each part of those two parts. What has been is what shall be. What has been done is what shall be done. And there is no new matter under the sun. That's why there are 3 times when Yahweh says, I will do a new thing. I will do something new. Because there is no new matter under the sun. Only if Yahweh wills, he creates something new. But remember that he rested. He stopped on the 7th day, which represents how he would work for the first 6 millenniums to bring the purpose to fruition, right, for creation. And then he will do a new earth and a new heavens. But when it comes to this reality, there is no new matter under the sun. Verse 9. What has been, will be. All right, then it says, and nothing is new. Chadash, Tachat Hashamesh, below the sun. Nothing is new. Well, it's interesting how it's written, because this is everything, but right here you have nothing. So nothing of everything is new. Or nothing of all things are new, right? Of everything that there is, nothing is new. All right, so ve'ain kal chadash. So, and there's nothing new under the sun. Under the sun. So that means that there's a lot of new things above the sun. But that is why you need to become spiritual. See above the sun, above this reality. Be able to look further than flesh. There is no new matter under the sun, for everything that is new is above the sun. That's why the new covenant came through Mashiach, through a virgin, and many other things that connect with this. And there is no new matter under the sun. But even the new covenant was based on the old covenant. So that the was is what came afterwards, right? Just in a deeper level. Is there a matter of which it is said, see, this is new? It was here already long ago. This is so important because a lot of people nowadays are so blind that they think that technology or everything that they enjoy is new, and it's not. It may be in a different presentation, but it has existed long ago already in one way or another. And like I have said, for instance, we have email. There used to be mail. Same thing, just quicker, right? But I don't doubt that there was at some point in history such technology that could be similar or even better than the email that we have nowadays. And with that, everything else. I say that because of all the technology that was taught by the angels to men, and because of how they changed history. So there's a lot of things that they have hit from us. So is there a matter of which it is said, see, this is new? It was here already long ago. Remember, for instance, I just said the new covenant, but the new covenant was based on the old covenant. And in fact, the new covenant, when it comes to the spiritual, came before the old covenant. And when I say that, is that in Genesis, we see how Abraham was justified through belief, and then came the law, which is the old covenant. So in fact, the new covenant, which is through belief, was actually mentioned before the one of the letter. So then it says, there is no remembrance of former ones. That's why people think that there are new things, because they have no remembrance of what was before. And history, they change it. And people tend to be egocentric, right? They tend to be narcissistic, think about themselves, and I repeat, sometimes without even wanting to be that way, is just natural when they are stuck in the flesh. The flesh thinks that only their experience is valid. The flesh thinks that only their experience is true, and that is the only reality. So the flesh tends to forget about anything or anybody else. So there is no remembrance of former ones, nor is there any remembrance of those that are to come by those who come later on. People always forget about those who came before. And they make statues, whatever they do, but they always forget the true character. They always forget. That's why they forgot the name, and they made an image, and they know nothing about the character of Mashiach, even though it is written in the scriptures and we were told to study it. And I'm talking about those of the world, of course, those in the apostasy who are following a different one, and they don't know, because there is no remembrance of former ones, nor is there any remembrance of those that are to come by those who come later on. I, Kohelet, was sovereign over Israel in Jerusalem. I, the gatherer, was sovereign over those who will rule like the mighty one through the instruction of Shalom. And I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom. And I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heavens. Once again, under the heavens, meaning the earthly reality. Shlomo was the wisest man of all before Mashiach. He received all wisdom. And because of that, he wanted to, well, because he was going to get so much wisdom and had already, he wanted to try everything in this reality because he wanted to know it all. He had the authority, he had the power. So he did it. And he says it here. And I set my heart, which is dangerous because the heart is deceitful above all things. But that's why Yahweh allowed Shlomo to do this. And I say allowed because Yahweh gives us free will, so that we could have these writings and the example of what not to do, because the wisdom is already there for those who have ears to hear. But those who don't will have to experience the futility of this reality to realize how vain it is, if they even get to that. And I set my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heavens. So since there is nothing new and there will be nothing new in the future, for everything that was will be, then he wanted to know it all that has been done under the heavens. This evil task, this is interesting that that's how he calls it. This evil task Elohim has given to the sons of men to be humbled by it. No matter how strong, how smart, how wise you think you are, when you get to try and do this, you'll realize that you'll be short of it. It is a task that no human can fulfill unless he receives eternal life through Mashiach, and therefore the wisdom that comes from the heavens in order to understand the purpose of reality. Shlomo came before the time of Yahushua, and Yahushua came as the truth, so there was no truth before Mashiach, and therefore he who was wise ended up knowing how evil this reality is when you don't have the truth. This evil task Elohim has given to the sons of men to be humbled by it, right? So that they realize that Yahweh is who made us, who made everything, and who gives us understanding, knowledge, and everything else that we may need. Verse 13. So it says Elohim, right? It doesn't say Yahweh, it says Elohim. And that has several implications. Obviously, the highest is Yahweh and the Son, Yahushua, but also Malachim that are more connected with this reality. So this evil task Elohim has given to the sons of men. It's interesting that it's called an evil task because Yahweh does not do anything evil, right? Verse 13 again. Ra, evil. This evil task Elohim has given to the sons of men to be humbled by it. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun. Now, this is one of the reasons why some believe Asmodeus was the one who wrote it, because him being an evil spirit and having been on earth for so long, and seeing this reality from another perspective, that of the spirits, that would mean a lot more when he says, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, right? However, like I was saying, since there's nothing new in a person's life with enough wisdom and power, one can see everything that is under the sun. Not necessarily get to understand it or know how it works, but at least get to see everything. I have seen all the works, the deeds that are done under the sun, and see, all was futile and feeding on wind, on ruach. Everything is taken, everything passes away. Everything is vanity, futile, like a breath passes. There is nothing done under the sun that will last for eternity. The sun was created for time to be counted. So in the reality of time, there's nothing that will be eternal. Everything will be temporal because it's under the sun, it's under the authority of time. And therefore, it will be futile. Time destroys, right? That's why Kronos, who is Samael, ate his children. And Sheol was futile and feeding on wind. Feeding. The crooked could not be straightened, sadly. And what is lacking could not be counted. It is what it is. And everything will be what it will be. The crooked could not be straightened, and what is lacking could not be counted. If you know that a person lacks responsibility, honor, and other things, you cannot count on him. If you know that a person is crooked, be careful, because unless he dies and is born again, he won't be able to be straightened. So I spoke to my heart. Right? Which is deceitful above all things. So I spoke to my heart, saying, see, I have attained greatness. I have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. And my heart has seen much wisdom and knowledge. And I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness. This is crazy, right? And I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness. So since he wanted all wisdom, he needed to know what being mad was, and not just mad as in angry, but mad as in crazy. People who are crazy, why are they crazy? Why does madness exist? What is it to be mad, really? So, and to know madness and folly. Amazing, the wise wanting to be a fool. To know madness and folly. Because there are a lot of people who enjoy that. There are a lot of people who have their whole lives in madness and folly, and they seem to enjoy it. So the wise man, Shlomo, by seeing that through wisdom, he actually suffered because he attained knowledge of the things of this world, how everything is futile. Then he said, I wonder if being mad or a fool is better than being wise, because being wise hurts. So I'm going to have to check it out. I'm going to have to see if that is the point of this reality, because if so, that would be pretty crazy, right? So he decides to try it. And I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I know that this too is fitting on wind. So he realized that that is also nothing, it's futile. I know that this too is feeding on wind. Verse 17. Ruach. For in much wisdom is much grief. Like I just mentioned, he had a lot of wisdom and therefore he had a lot of grief. So he wanted to see if the opposite would bring joy. But he realized that that wasn't the case. For in much wisdom is much grief, which is interesting because, let me go to 1 Corinthians, and we're about to finish tonight. So 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient, is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast, is not puffed up, does not behave indecently, does not seek its own, is not provoked, reckons not the evil, does not rejoice over the unrighteousness, but rejoices in the truth. It covers all, believes all, expects all, endures all. Love never fails, and whether there be prophecies, they shall be inactive, or tongues, they shall cease, or knowledge, it shall be inactive. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part shall be inactive. And he continues, and it's very powerful. So you see, this is what I wanted to read, and it's verse 4. Interesting how it appears here. Love is patient, is kind. Let's see. in the concordance. Love suffereth long and is kind. So, well, it's interesting because it is a valid translation, but it's not the only translation. Here, though, we can see how patience is connected to suffering, right? It is not nice to have patience. That's why a lot of people are not patient, because that means you suffer, right? While you wait. Love is patient. And I say that because we also see it with the fact that Yahweh is patient with those who are sinning, waiting for them to repent. But while he's waiting for them to repent, he suffers for them because he knows that if they don't, they will suffer eternally. And that's what love does. When you love someone, you tend to suffer for them. You worry about them, and you're willing to suffer for them because you love them, right? That's why there's no greater love than to give your life for a friend. And giving your life is pretty much suffering. So you see how it appears here. They say charity, but it's talking about, well, in Hebrew would be ahava, which is the numerical value 13, same numerical value as echad, which is one. So Yahweh echad, Yahweh ahava. Yahweh is one, Yahweh is love. 13 plus 13, meaning one, echad, plus ahava, 13. 13 plus 13, that's 26, which is the numerical value of Yahweh. So Yahweh first came to show his love, for Yahweh so loved the world that he sent his only begotten son, right, to die for our sins. So love, 13. Now the last comes to show that Yahweh is one and to become one with Mashiach the first, and therefore he's the other 13. So by adding first and last, 13 plus 13, love and oneness, you get 26. That is the manifestation of Yahweh. So love is macrothameo, macrodumeo, to be a long spirit, not to lose heart, right? To persevere, to wait, to be patient. Oh, there you go. Persevere patiently and bravely in enduring misfortunes and troubles. Interestingly enough, we are in the month of those who persevere, those who endure, Eitanim. To be patient and bearing the offenses and injuries of others. Bearing the offenses and injuries of others means suffering. To be mild and slow in avenging, to be long-suffering, slow to anger, slow to punish. So now going back, says, love suffers long and is kind. Love suffers long and is kind. Kohelet says, for in much wisdom is much grief. Yahweh's love, his ruach, his wisdom. So it's interestingly how through the ruach you receive patience in order to be able to take that grief and wait and persevere till the manifestation of his promise. For in much wisdom is much grief. And since we just saw the other one, let me check this one. The word would be kas, anger, vexation, provocation, grief, frustration. Like when you know stuff and others don't and don't want to know and don't care, then you get frustrated, right? When you know things about this reality that you cannot do anything about it, only Yahweh, and he will do it his way, which is the best way, but you are in the flesh and the flesh tells you to do something, you get frustrated. And that feels like grief when you know that people will have to die because they don't want to accept the truth, because they don't want to serve Yahweh, the enemy will destroy them. So you feel grief. And you can get angry also, of course. I mean, you can feel anger because of the wisdom that you may have received and others reject. So, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases suffering. And he who increases knowledge increases or adds suffering. You see how it says here, Yosef? If you take the Yud here, right here, you get Yosef, right? The name of the ancestor of the last. For Mashiach came from David, from Yehudah. The last comes from Yosef, where he comes to add, he comes to gather, like Kohelet, because Yosef is also a gatherer, and he will be added next to the first. So the first came, and then Yahweh adds a son. That's why when Rachel had Yosef, she said, may he add a son. So that's why he called that son Yosef, and then she was added Benjamin. And remember that Yahushua brought wisdom, the last brings understanding. And through the mixing of wisdom and understanding, we get knowledge. So he who multiplies wisdom will multiply suffering, vexation, frustration, I think will be the best right now in this context. And he who adds or gathers knowledge will add to himself suffering. But you see that it is a different type of suffering. It's being written differently. Machov. And let me go and check it out here in the concordance. Sorrow. Machov. Pain and sorrow. Physical and mental, right? Emotional. So he who adds knowledge will add pain. Isn't it interesting that when man ate from the tree of knowledge, we added pain to this to our reality, because then death entered, pain in general, and that's why Yahweh will stop it at the end. And remember, oh, this is so beautiful, what we were just reading in 1 Corinthians 13. For we know knowledge in part. That's good, because that way we suffer in part, right? Because if you add knowledge, you add suffering or sorrow. Well, Yahweh did it so that we don't die of sorrow. We know in part and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part shall be inactive. When I was a child, I spoke as a child, I taught as a child, I reasoned as a child, but when I became a man, I did away with childish matters. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know as I also have been known. Yahweh knows everything about us, so we eventually will know as we are known completely. And now believe, expectation and love remain. So this is very important verse I mention a lot, and you see is verse 13. Believe connected to Mashiach, emunah, faith, expectation, that is hope, tikvah in Hebrew, represented or representing the Ruach HaKodesh, and love, as we know Yahweh is love, the Son, the Ruach, and Yahweh, the Father. Or we could say the first, the last, because we expect the manifestation of everything that is missing yet. First and last, and Yahweh, who is first and last, who is love. They remain, meaning they are eternal. Love is eternal. Yahweh is eternal, of course. Yahushua gave us eternal life. That is our belief. And that's what we expect. So those three things, faith, hope, and love, are eternal. And that's important, because that means that we will always use the emunah to do things, for we can do all things through Mashiach who strengthens us, and he's the belief. We will always expect new things, because now we will be in heaven, meaning in the heavenly realm, the spiritual reality, in the heavenly kingdom on earth. So there will be kind of like a mix of this reality with the spiritual reality. And I say all of that because we just read how there is nothing new under the sun. But after that, we won't need a sun because the Lamb will be the light of his people, right? So there will be new things. That's why there will be expectation forever. We will always expect new things because it won't be like this reality. So these three things are eternal. These three, so, and now believe, expectation, and love remain, these three, but the greatest of these is love, right? Yahweh is love. He's the greatest. He's above first and last. He's above the Ruach and the Son. That's why Yahushua said, the Father who is greater than I, right? And lastly, remember how, and the reason why I came here, because he was talking about prophecy, he was talking about knowledge. These will cease, just like tongues. And I say these three because he's mentioning three right here. But when it comes to the gift of tongues, that will cease because we will all speak one tongue eventually. Lashon HaKodesh, right? True Hebrew. So there will be the gift of tongues. We won't have the gift of tongues anymore, only for this reality where there is confusion. Knowledge, we know in part, but we will eventually know everything because knowledge is finite. So when that happens, when we receive all knowledge, then sorrow will end, right? Because in this reality, you add knowledge, you add sorrow. But when knowledge ends, sorrow will end. Hope that's understood. And prophecy, because we will already know the testimony of Mashiach, and we will live it, no longer necessarily believe it without seeing it. We will be seeing it eternally. So the prophecy, as meaning what needed to be fulfilled for us to enter that reality, will have passed, so there won't be any more prophecy. Prophecy, knowledge, and tongues are temporal, are just of this reality. It's interesting that Yahuanandi Mercer, or Eliyahu, came to prepare the way by speaking to those around him about he who would come after him. Then Mashiach came to give knowledge of the Father, who is the Father. And then the last comes as the prophet. And once all of that is fulfilled, then this reality will be inactive. It will be done. And then we'll enter the next reality in which belief, hope, and love remain. So going back to Kohelet, for in much wisdom is much grief, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow or suffering. But remember that for lack of knowledge, my people are destroyed. So it's better to attain knowledge and suffer for it than not knowing and being destroyed, which is worse than suffering. I mean, you're going to suffer, but then there will be an end to everything. Well, when we talk about this reality, instead with us, we go through suffering for Mashiach in order to receive the reward, eternal life. So that's how this chapter ends.